everybody, welcome. I'm Daniel G. Garza, and this is another episode of Put It Together. Welcome to the show. I want to start by welcoming all of our friends on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. If you don't mind sharing this on your page so that other people can watch along with you. If you're watching us on YouTube, do us a favor. Scroll down and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that other people can watch along. And this way you'll be notified when we have new shows. And remember, here at Little Mexican Productions Sync, we have new shows on Monday with our horoscopes. Wednesdays, Christian and Daniel. On Fridays, a Cardivo. And on Saturdays, Put It Together live stream. And every once in a while, we throw in special shows for you guys to watch. So make sure that you are on top of it and you are watching with us. This week, I am so excited to have, she was recommended by a friend, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But let me tell you a little bit about, where's the banner? Here's my banner. About Gail. Gayla Turner is a bank examiner utilizing her intuition and curiosity to uncover facts and analyze complex figures. A debut author, she has honed her writing skills with private instructors, editors, and critique groups of established writers in the Los Angeles area. She is a member of the Wisconsin Historical Society, the Romance Writers of America, and the Historical Novel Society. In her free time, Gayla enjoys cooking, hiking, looking at old photos, and researching LGBTQ plus history. Born and raised in Southern California, she and her partner live in San Marino, California, and share their home with their adorable dog, Bailey. Without more, bring her on the show. Hi, Gayla.
Hey, Daniel. Great to thank you so much for having me here.
Of course. Welcome to the show. As usual, for those of you who are curious how I know my guest, if y'all are aware, remember Johnny Shaper. He was on the show. He's been on the show for like 4 times now. At some point, if I have a real live show, I think he's going to be like a musical director because he's been on the show so long. But he referred you over to me. And
yes, yay, Johnny.
Once, Johnny, if you happen to be watching, hello, sir. There he is.
Oh, there he is.
It's like right on cue. Hi, Johnny. Thank you for this connection. I'll stop and say for anybody out there, if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, please write to us, send us your information, and we'll get in touch. How are you doing, Gayla?
I'm doing awesome. It's a busy time right now. Book is launching officially next Tuesday, or this Tuesday coming up. So just, wow, it's been a whirlwind for sure.
That is such an exciting time because I remember my children's book when I wrote it last year. The anticipation, like, okay, we're gonna put it on Amazon and it's coming, and it was like, ooh! So I can only imagine.
Yeah, I do have to do like the deep breaths once in a while just to kind of like, okay, just breathe, get through it. But it's exciting, it's fun, it's exhausting all at the same time.
And let's not lie, but it feels kind of good to tell people, I'm an author. I wrote a book.
Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. It
There is always that little part.
There's a little bit.
But I want to hear the story because for everybody, I do have the book. It's awesome. But I want to just get started with the whole because there's so much to talk about. So Gayla Turner, tell us how you put it together.
Putting it together, it was all kind of an accident that happened in 2010. Looking for old photos to share with my mother that was suffering from dementia. And just, how we kind of do looking through family photos to kind of remind her of things in the past. And me and my sister would often share those memories with her. And, one time I was looking for some photos to go through for her and looking for something different because I've seen the other photos like so many times. I'm like, okay, I just really want to find some new photos to look at. And then I saw these 2 boxes in the far back of her closet, and marked my mother's old photos. And I thought they were my mother's photos, but it turned out they were actually my grandmother's photos. And so when I was looking through the boxes of photos, and these were photos from early 1900s, from 1910 to 1922. So this is literally a time capsule that nobody knew about. I've never seen these photos, and my brother and sister had never seen these photos. So this is like literally a family time capsule that I'm opening up for the first time. And I don't even know when last time anybody actually opened up these boxes. But as I was looking at the photos, I found wedding photos. It said our wedding, and the date on the photo was June 8th, 1915. I'm like, going, cool. Since I've never seen my grandfather before, I was like, I gotta see what this guy looks like. I've never met him. He left the family in the 30s, so he's never been a part of my life. So looking at the photos, I wanted to see what he looked like, just out of curiosity. And when I was looking at the photos, and I was comparing, who this person was. It was clearly my grandmother that was in the wedding dress and holding a bouquet of flowers, and it was clearly a very traditional type of wedding photo. But as I was looking at the photos, I noticed that the man in the standing next to my grandmother, being the groom, had really small features, very small hands, very petite. Uh, the the shirts or the jackets were kind of falling off the shoulders, and they were rolled up underneath. And then I noticed that the pants were rolled up underneath because the pants were too long. And took me a while to figure it all out, but finally came to the conclusion, looking at the photos, and that the groom was actually a woman. And it was, it was one of those things. I even saying that right now, I get that kind of chill thing going on. But it was one of those experiences where, I grew up thinking I was the only gay person in the family. I was it. I was like the kind of that square peg. Everybody loved me, but there was that Aunt Gayla, and there's Gayla. This always kind of like, ooh, who's she gonna bring home this time? And and they always made me feel very loved and welcome. But I think it was always hard when you feel different from the family. So finding the photos just kind of, it changed my life, because I was the first time in my life that didn't feel like, oh my God, I'm not the only one in the family to be queer or LGBTQ. And it was just really kind of one of those epiphany of those times in my life where I just felt like that warm embrace of knowing that, wow, I'm not the only one.
Yeah, it's because I grew up in a very conservative
Mm.
Catholic family, and I'm I'm 51, and to this date, I don't know about anybody before me
Right.
that that was out. Uh, as in any family, we have, there's the suspicions. You're like, I wonder, uh,
Hmm.
but so I get it. And as I was reading that part of the book, uh, particularly you're coming out, and we don't have to share too much. I want people to buy the book, but uh, what level? Like, can you talk about like the valid? Because it's all about validating
Yeah,
ourselves,
it
right?
is. Absolutely.
Like once, and for those of you out there, and I hope that you're out to your families and you're comfortable, and if you're not, it's a big step, and do it whenever you feel ready. But for those of us, like I came out when I was 17,
Mm.
and you
Yeah.
came out about that same
Yeah.
age, right?
Yeah.
And so once you're out at that age, there's like this like um,
Yeah.
but to know that there was this whole other life that your grandmother had, um,
Mhm.
was there some personal validation? Like, okay, there's more than just me and the family.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was total validation. It was like, wow, okay, me and my grandma. I was like, okay, this is amazing. I felt more centered. I felt more grounded. I didn't feel like I was like dangling out there all by myself anymore. And that was one of well, I guess one of the really important reasons I wrote the book, um, is to kind of, when I had that sense of not feeling alone anymore, I go, well, maybe, there's that kid, in Arkansas somewhere that's feeling like they're the only one. And, I just kind of want people to know, if you're feeling that way, you're not the only one. There's a huge community out there to welcome. And so that was one of the reasons that I really felt compelled to tell the stories, because I felt, if I felt this way, and I want to see if that can also resonate with other people that felt so alone at some point in their lives and in their families. Because, regardless of how loved you are, when you are different, it's lonely.
Yeah. One of the things that caught my attention was that I think every generation thinks we're the first generation that does this. But to go back that far in time and to
Mm.
realize that there was already this community
Right.
that, although secret, was already there. Um, is there something that you learned as part of the LGBTQ plus community that you learned uh, reading, looking at the pictures, doing the
Mhm.
research? Like, was there some connections? I guess that's what I'm trying to get. Like, there's something that you're like, oh, wow, we do that now, but
Yeah.
they had to hide.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and let me first start off by saying I'm not a accredited historian or genealogist. This, what I found out was just kind of digging for those answers and just kind of digging in and looking at the photos because there's a lot of photos there. It's not just one event of the marriage photos. There's different seasons. There's different people involved. There was actually kind of a sub community or a way that people found each other in a very small town. And I suspect a lot of that had to do with a lot of the secrecy that was going on right then. Right at that particular time, the um, conservative Christian groups were very much involved in they brought in the Comstock Law and really trying to weed out the Europeans coming in because they considered the Europeans coming in as having a lot of deviant behavior. And they focused a lot of their attention on large cities to kind of weed out a lot of that, what they considered deviant behavior. So I think what that kind of did at that point is that it drew them into a very smaller community as far as being safe. And I think they felt safer in a smaller farm community than they would being in Chicago. So it was interesting to find a lot of that information out. And even when I came out in the 80s, yeah, it was hard to know who to trust. It was hard to know, gosh, if I tell someone what is this going to do? And even though I was a kid coming out in LA, I can't imagine the terror it would be coming out in a smaller town in middle America where, you are literally, there's no community center, there's no LGBT center resources. What would that be like? So there was a heightened sense of danger that they would have experienced. And um, I firmly believe, and I know this is to be true, is that we've always been there. We've always had to live in the background of society. So it's not like we didn't just show up like 50 years ago and say, hey, we want to marry. We've been here in history forever and ever and ever. I mean, since Roman era, they can document that. So I think it's just really claiming our space in the LGBTQ community and owning it and being proud of who we are now, but also being proud of who we were in the past.
Yeah, and Johnny is right. That's why stories like this are so important to tell. We're
Mm.
far from alone, and I think that a lot of us grow up that like and there's there's a part of the story where her parents are watching. Okay, because it's about your grandmother, so
Yeah,
there's a part of the story that I so resonated with, and I was a little bit like, well, that was me. Where she's a tomboy basically,
yeah,
and they're like, nobody's gonna want to marry her if she keeps acting this way. And
right.
I remember me playing with my cousins and their dolls and in the dollhouse, and I wanted a Barbie, but I also had a Tonka truck. Just for everybody out there, I had a Tonka Barbie. My Barbie drove a Tonka truck, so
Yeah.
that's
Mine too.
and I remember my parents was like, "Hey, you're not gonna get a girlfriend if you keep
Yeah,
being like that." And I was like, and in the back of my head, I was like, "Well, is that a bad thing?"
yeah, exactly.
um, what did you learn about you as you were writing this book?
Um, that's a really good question. I mean, I learned that yeah, I kind of thought, when I was writing the book, what would it be like to have been gay back then? Am I putting myself in that environment? Would I have would I have been as strong as my grandmother to keep those photos? Would I have been as brave as some of those other women to act on their feelings and who they wanted to love? Um, and I have no doubt. I mean, I learned that for myself that yes, I would. That's who I am. I can't imagine hiding that or pretending I'm some anybody other than who I am. And I'm also feel very fortunate for that because I received a letter not too long ago from a trans woman that has had to live her life primarily as a father and husband. And that's happening even today. And it broke my heart. It was like, it made me cry because I was like, wow, I just want to give that person, I just want to give her a hug and tell her that she's not alone. So I really think that who we are and being true to who we are is just so important. But it takes bravery and it takes a lot of different things. And it's hard to change, culture overnight. We're just not going to be able to do it overnight. But I think we just got to keep on doing what we're doing and talking about it and showing up and claiming our stories.
One of the things that connected me to you, not necessarily the book, but to your story, is that we both came out very young. Because I tell people I've been out of the closet longer than I was ever in, and if you come see the closets in my house, they're just as messy as my life. But um, uh, it does feel odd because being a public figure in my own level, I get messages from folks that
Mm,
are 30, 40, 50, and are just now coming out and are trying to get their footing together. And then I see their lives, and I remember me at 17 just being, I always say, like having that new gay smell and, 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 and just trying to take over the
yeah,
world. Um, and how fortunate we are that, I mean, mind you, even with some of the things that still go on in society, we still have some level of freedom. And then as I'm reading the book and started to think about Ruby, and like as she's discovering her sexuality and her likes and dislikes, but like I start to think did she know that she could or couldn't reveal? You know what I mean? Like what was
mm,
going? I mean, I know you paint a picture for us in the book, but of course, me being me, I had to go in deeper. I'm like to be in this small town and have these feelings and emotions and wanting to just yell at the world or post something on Facebook or
right,
come out on Instagram or whatever, like to not have that available. That's what I'm trying to get to
right.
not have that available to her and
Hmm.
and 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 feel so obviously not completely alone because there were other people, but to
Right,
feel that like she couldn't really like be like, hey, I'm queer. I'm here. Get over it.
right, right.
Something that we and I did have even in the '80s. I still had that. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Oh yeah, totally. And I think that had to have been a huge, because it was dangerous. It wasn't just like, hey, I'm going to be ostracized from my family kind of thing. I mean, this was back in the day where they would put you in a mental institution. These are the days where they would incarcerate you. There'd be fines involved. There'd be persecution within your local community on a much deeper level than just being ostracized from the family. So there, and not to mention that was also a time when there was that hyper patriotism going on to where it was also, what makes you a good American at that point. And if you look at a lot of the framing that they used back in 1950, early 1900s, a lot of it is very familiar with what we're seeing now, as far as the conservative Christian groups, dictating what is it to be a good American and a citizen. So a lot of that framing that they used back then, they're using the same framing even today, which I thought it was really and I didn't even realize that until, I had written that. I talk about the political aspect of it in the early 1900s. I don't go too far into it, but I touch onto it. But then, last couple of years of what's going on with our America, I realized, like, oh my God, this is exactly what they did in the early 1900s. So there's a lot of the familiarity, unfortunately, of what they're trying to do in framing and trying to banning gay books, trying to ban the word gay, which is another way to try to erase us from society. They're going back in time, trying to erase us altogether. And I think that's where it's really important that we stand firm on our story and telling our story, that we do have a really important story in our that plays a part of America, and this is who we are, and we've always been here. We've played a valuable role in that.
Yeah. We joke about sometimes of like when it comes to fashion or music or TV shows, like history repeats itself. But this is the dark side of how history repeats
Yeah.
itself. That their religion, social norms, and culture will repeat itself to keep people
Mhm.
marginalized and down. And so, for those of you out there, I'm this is not a political show. So, but the midterms elections are coming, and this is a time for you to use your voice and your vote to make a difference. Pay attention who you vote for, because um, I know we're talking about a book, but it's a book based on a real life, and
Mhm.
and and that's repeating itself. So that's my little PSA for right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm with you. You have to pay attention to what's going on today. And it's part of that is understanding what happened yesterday. So looking at our history is important part of understanding, okay, we've got to be vigilant. We can't take the foot off the gas. We never have been able to, and unfortunately it seems like we're sliding backwards. So I think it's important that we all realize that and take an active role in participating in the elections and voicing our opinions about that. I think it's vital for us, because I'm concerned that with the recent overturn of our women's rights, that's only a matter of time before they're going to go back and try to reclaim gay marriage, and it's just, I think it's almost inevitable.
Yeah. So
That's sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah,
yeah, that's our political little
yeah,
bit of
that's it. I swear I'm not going to talk anything. Yeah.
But also another thing, because you talk about the first picture about
Mm,
the women in the picture, and you're like, wait a minute, that's a female. Um,
mm,
Also showing. Okay, I'm going to tell this little story, because I was facilitating a training this week in Seattle, and on Thursday night, as we were getting ready to leave on Thursday night, this group of teenagers, I'm not sure what they were doing there, but they were there, and we could see them and just their realness and all their realness, and it was so beautiful to see them. Of course, I'm 51, and that part of me was like, these kids, like,
kids nowadays.
yeah, who wears purple hair? And but it was so wonderful to see them, like, just show exactly what they wanted, which is
Right.
something that we did in the 80s, but I kind of didn't, because I didn't want to be too gay.
Yeah.
So what was the importance of seeing this photo of women dressed in male drag per se?
Yeah, I think it just represented the deep need that we have. Um, especially because underneath the photo says our wedding, and in 1915, I think it goes back to that inherent need that we've always wanted to be and commit to the person that we love, and I think it's an important part of who we are today, and that's why it's so important to maintain our rights, because looking at their need to get married and having a wedding ceremony, and this had nothing to do with a play or a performance or anything else, because I've gone on some of these other websites and you see a picture of two men together or two women together, and the first reaction or the comments that a person will make on, oh, well, they were probably just practicing for a play, or they were probably just doing something, it wasn't what, because people have a hard time believing that we existed that far back. They just don't understand that we've existed forever. So it really is important. When I saw those photos in one of the woman that my grandmother was married to or had the wedding ceremony with is Ella. She clearly, would wear the male suits, and you would see her kind of transform. I have pictures of her in dress, and I have pictures of her in the male garments and being a gentleman or being a gent, so to speak, is what they would call each other. Because within my grandmother's photos, she was very clever with the way that she would tag photos. Some of them, the photos when they're referred to as gents or chums or pals. So clearly there's a correlation between how they're dressed and how they wanted to be seen in public, and referred to as pals or chums, which is, I would think back then would be really referred to in a male role. That's how they wanted to be referred to, as as a chum or a pal. And subsequently, I think that's just a part of who we are. We're talking about transitioning, or people that are transitioning. And that's just a part of nature. That's just who we are. We see the need to dress like someone that you may not agree with it, but they're dressing. That's how they feel, that's who they are.
Yeah.
We need to accept that and love them. And so I think it's a part of honoring our ancestors by telling the story of who they are and what they wanted to be and who they wanted to be.
That's another interesting point that we don't really think about. Like, for instance, now you're hanging out with your friends, like I sometimes girl or queen, and we throw out little words, or I remember it's just the equivalent, but like my mom would say, "Well, is he dandy?" And in Spanish, and that would be her code word, "Is he gay?" So that my
Yeah.
dad would know what we were talking about.
Right.
And but to come to find out that terminologies and words and have been around too, as
Right.
long as, I mean, you prove it in your book. Like, I guess, kind of to move on to the book, but to let people know that know your history, and you are providing us with part of that history.
Mhm.
And know the history of homosexuality in the United
Mhm.
States and how far back it goes, and just to know that dressing the way that you feel, or
Mhm.
calling ourselves names to identify each other,
Mhm.
so that nobody else, code words,
Right.
has been
Yeah.
around forever. And
Yeah.
I'm going to bring this back up again because Johnny said it. It's a way. It's sad how relevant the book is after 100 years. We've come far, but we have to keep telling our stories. Yeah, definitely.
Right. Yeah, because they would, even some of the photos would refer to like Ella as Mr. O'Brien. So they would actually change names for some of the pictures, and I believe that they did that. That was just how they related to each other, and that's how they saw each other. It's also a way to protect each other, because if the photos were found, it's also a way to kind of safeguard who the photos belong to and who was that. Because if the photos would have been found by anybody outside their circle, I mean, honestly, to look at how dangerous that was, I can't imagine. Most people, if they took the photos back then, would probably end up discarding them or destroying them just out of self-preservation. But the reality is for the relationships, that all that could ever really have at the end of the relationship were the photos. If they,
And
if
for everybody watching, as you hopefully buy the book, and we're going to give you the website at the end, but it starts with this box of photos. Now, another reason that I was like wanting to read the book was I have like thousands of printed pictures all the way back from when I was in junior high, and mainly because there's a couple of guys in there that I thought were really cute, so I kept the pictures. But through because we're talking about all like the advancing, the stories, the history, but were there any parts that like hurt you or bothered you, or were unpleasant as you were doing your research?
I think, when I first started doing the research, I think the problem that really bothered me is that there was nothing out there. When I found the photos in 2010, Googling gay history or Googling LGBT, it was just not a lot of information out there. Now, since then, I mean, there have been a lot of really good books published, and a lot of good sites that now have dedicated to our queer history and our culture. But really, when I was starting to do the history or doing just finding information, there was nothing out there. One of the stories I did find, which was was, and I touched on the book. It was one of the most disturbing stories was is talking about a school teacher that had hot tar poured on part of her body. And what was really, it was a horrible crime. But what was so interesting is where they placed the article about these two men that did this to the school teacher. They placed that article in the back of kind of like where the women do all their like their recipes, and it was a Thanksgiving a newspaper article, and it's between kind of like what to make for Thanksgiving dinner, and it was like talk about all this, and then there'd be like, oh, what to do with that back pain after you've been ironing all day, and then in the middle of the two stories, it's about this woman that was basically tortured by these men, and she was a school teacher. So you can't. I can't say it was because she was a lesbian, but because of the crime itself was so personal, you have to kind of wonder: was that a because she rejected them, or was it even just a sign of for women back then? Keep this could happen to you, so you better be good mothers and good wives, because this could happen to you if you step out of line. So it was all very kind of submissive, and very it's kind of a really creepy tidbit that I found. I go, wow, that's really disturbing. But I had to print it only because I think it was important to tell that part of the story, and that it is a very dark part of our history. And it just kind of pointed out also how brave they would have to be to still find each other and find a way to love each other.
It's crazy. Yeah, because we read about other countries that
Mhm.
still have very strict homosexual laws and all the way to death, but we don't we don't have history. We don't tell those stories, and
Yeah.
um, even now, as you like, I looked up things from when I was growing up. I came out in 1988, and right in the middle of the 80s, and like let's enjoy
Yeah.
the 80s. Which for me, one of the cool things was that we were in the middle of the 80s, where the
Yeah.
colors, the
Oh
clothes,
my God, it was so much
music,
fun. Yeah.
right? I mean, we're both about that same age group, right?
I'm a little bit older, but yeah.
And but for anybody like who wasn't a teen or an adult in the
Mhm.
80s, like it was the perfect time to explore your
Yeah.
sexuality because everybody else was doing it, and pop
Mhm.
music and movies. Um, but I go back and try to find history of like Dallas, where I came out and where I grew up, and there's so little information except for the
Yeah.
tragic stories, and we need to
Right.
balance those out somehow. So for anybody out there, if you're into writing, if you're a historian, if you have pictures, start getting those journals
Yeah.
together. Start putting those things together. They're going to
Yeah.
be so valuable at some point. Um, I lost my question, but let me go to Johnny's next comment.
Okay.
The passive aggressive messaging is still very active today. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Um, So let's talk about your family a little bit. So as you're, because finally, I feel like it was this beautiful Pandora's box that you opened and
Yeah.
finally went through. Um, as the because in part of the book you're talking about your aunt, and she's kind of wanting to tell you but not tell you.
Yeah.
Um, but what about the rest of your family? Was there more people that you told, or
Oh yeah, when I found it, it was such a chance that I found it though, because I think about it even today is that if my brother or my sister or any other relative would have found these photos, they would not have known what they were looking at. It would have been just glossed over, like, oh well, these are just old photos, and they may not have kept them, or just that, well, they're nice photos, old photos, we'll keep them for, but they wouldn't have seen and to look at the people the way I did, and to read between the lines, and to um, look at them through the same lens. So I think that was the first thing that really amazes me, that I did find the photos, and I was able to identify fairly quickly what the photos were. My family, uh, they I think, they looked at it, they kind of knew that, okay, well, Gayla's really passionate about this. And I think they were very supportive of me overall. But at the very root, I don't think they understood how important it was to me. I think they kind of like, oh, that's nice. And I think they probably thought, oh, well, she might write a book. We don't really know. But, we're like, oh, it's more not say that they didn't doubt me, but it was more just like, oh, that's nice. And then oh, shit, you're. So, I think I had to kind of take it from my perspective, how important it was to me, and then how important it is to our community to tell our story. And that's really what was driving me a lot of the times is just like, okay, just keep on doing this because this is not, writing a book was never in my list of things to do in life. It was just, it wasn't. Um, I always say that the story happened to me. I just happened to write it down because even after I found the photos, I kept them for a couple of years. I didn't know what to do with them. I would look at them, I'd take them out, I'd look at them. They would almost tell the story themselves because they're, like I said, there's different seasons, there's different people, and you kind of just you look at the photos and imagine what brought them to that point of taking that photo. And so a couple of years when had gone by, and I like kind of like story kind of like rolling in my head, like, oh, I wonder what this is, and how did this happen? And it was kind of telling some of my writing friends that are, living in LA, you have a lot of people that are very creative and very talented writers, hoping that they would do the story for me. I'm like, okay, this is a great story. Yeah, this is a great story. You got to tell this. I'm like, but you don't understand. I'm not a writer. Oh no, this is your story to tell. I can't tell your story for you. I was like, damn. Um, so it went on like that for a while, and it took me. It's a long process because I had to learn a lot, and I'm still feel, I could probably rewrite it now and have it be a lot better, but it's a story I wanted to tell, and I think it's important for me to have gotten it out there into the world because it is really relevant to what we're experiencing today, and I think it's something that we need to embrace our history and be proud of it. And at the end of the day, my family, I feel that they're really proud of me as well and supportive. So I really do. I feel very blessed that I'm in the environment that is supportive and not in an environment that's constantly saying, "Oh, you shouldn't have wrote a story. You're gonna get cut off now." That's not the case at all. They were always very loving and supporting for me.
And I'll tell you, for those of you, I was reading at the airport yesterday on the way back home from a trip, and the chapters are short, but you're so good at describing the moment. Um, Okay, so I'm gonna. I want y'all to buy the book. So I'm only gonna tell that this part. Okay, because there's a bunch of parts where I was like, oh shit, that could be me. Like I've been like I in my own life. There's been a moment like that. In my own life, there's been a moment like that.
Yeah,
But there's a moment in the book where you talk about arriving where Ruby, your grandmother used to live, and um, walking, like driving down the streets and okay, so there's one particular part. I don't know how to tell the stories without giving the whole story out. But there's the part where there's two parts in the same. There's one where you're standing in the middle of a street taking pictures, and you're like, there's no cars driving, and
Mhm.
you're just taking pictures. And I'm like, that would be such a beautiful moment to just soak in the city and
Yeah,
be a sponge and go, okay, Ruby, I'm here.
yeah,
Give me your Google just now, but it's like give me your energy, and then
yeah.
when you arrive at the bed and breakfast and you're standing alone in the living room and you're like you're standing in front of a mirror.
Mhm.
Can you take us back? What did you see when you looked in the mirror?
Yeah, it was, even, thinking about it now, I get the goosebumps because it was, I went back to where it all happened. I went back to Amherst, Wisconsin, where the wedding photos were taken. I wanted to go back there. I was just driven. I just had to be there. I don't know. I can't explain it other than the fact that I had to physically be there. I needed to see everything that she saw. And when I walked into there's an old Victorian bed and breakfast. It was beautiful. It was just amazing. And walking in there, it was literally like I felt myself slipping into my mother's or my grandmother's shoes, and just kind of witnessing everything through her eyes, and looking at the mirror thinking, gosh, she probably looked in this old mirror, because it was made around the same time that she would have been here, and she probably, this is like one of the biggest houses in town, so I'm sure at one point she would have walked in the same doors that I just walked in. So just kind of going through that experience, it was very surreal, and very disorienting at the same time, because it was like seeing things in double. I don't know if I can even explain it rationally, but I just felt that I was living in both the current and the past simultaneously, and living the story, as the photos were sharing them with me. And every time I thought that I had hit a dead end with my clues of where she may have lived or what she had done, it was always amazing to me that um, something would happen, and I would find another piece of the puzzle just at the right time, and I was just like, "Thank you, Grandma," because
Yeah.
it was so perfect. I almost miss that whole experience of writing the book, because I felt this connection of having her looking over my shoulder and saying, "Okay, you need to go there, go look there," and I would look in a direction I hadn't seen before, and I'll find another clue to kind of lead me to what she may have done on that day, or what some of the events that occurred there. Because there were some really happy things that happened there. It was pretty, I know we kind of painted kind of a gloom and doom picture of it, but it was really brilliant, how they would find each other, and um, have events right in front of everybody, but nobody suspected.
Yeah.
So it was really fun.
I just had this image when I was reading that part that like you're standing in front of the mirror and the reflection is her, just
Yeah,
in all her beauty, and I'm
yeah.
like, like okay, so was there any spiritual
Oh,
growth for you as you wrote the book?
oh yeah. It was. God, there was just so much. It was the experience overall of just, I went to Wisconsin by myself. All this was, I went there by myself. I didn't actually want anybody there with me, because some people said, "Oh, you should be documenting this. You should we'll have a film crew. We'll do this." I'm like, this is a personal journey for me. It was a parallel journey of not only discovering my grandmother, but also discovering myself, and being like, oh wow, I can do this. I can do this all by myself, and this is my journey just as much as it is her journey. And at the end, I felt that completing the journey, was a part of completing her journey as well, because she couldn't do or live my life the way I am right now. She couldn't. So I just felt that it was, a journey that was spiritual for me in a lot of senses, and just going where I did and feeling her and getting vibrations, and going to a lot of cemeteries, doing a lot of research. Or people are like, why did you go to the cemeteries? Because it's like, I needed to visit these folks. I need to say hello, because I want them to know we haven't forgotten about them.
I just think it's so amazing that had she not had the life that she had, you would not be here.
Right.
And you being here, you
Mhm.
went back to give her the life that she wanted
Right.
through this book. And
Mm.
I mean, it's such a circle, and
It is.
I feel a little like, okay, as part of the LGBT community, I feel a little jelly that you get to experience this,
Mhm.
not just your life, but bring to life her life. Does
Right.
that make sense?
No, it totally does. It totally does. And because I'm here, we all know what the ending is, but there is a happy ending. I mean, I think that's where, we've come a long ways. And I want to honor that. I want to honor all of our ancestors that came before us, because it's amazing that I'll talk to people, and almost every straight, gay, doesn't matter. They're like, oh, I think my aunt so and so may have been a lesbian, or my uncle Frank, or and they're always saying, our relatives or our ancestors. And I think a big part of this is it is honoring our ancestors as well, and honoring who they were, and how sad it must have been for them to not live the life that we're living right now, even though it's hard sometimes. But at least we have the option, and there's places we can go to be safe. But they didn't have any places to go that were really safe.
Well, um, we're 50 minutes to the end of the show, and this is the part of the show where I ask my guest to share some words of wisdom with the audience. So, Gayla Turner, what words of wisdom do you have for us?
Um, I just think that learning about our history is so important, and I think it's important for our young people. I think right now, young people, they're so fluid and they're so comfortable, most of them, with their sexuality. And wow, I'm thinking this is crazy because they're just so comfortable with it, where we wouldn't have been in the 80s. But I still think it's an important lesson or an important message for them to understand, a part of that past, that it wasn't always easy to get here, and to honor the people that sacrificed so much. And there's been a lot of people that sacrificed a lot to get here, and I just want them to understand that. And so it's a big part of, telling our story.
So, for everybody out there, just jot down. There's so many ways to tell your story now,
Yeah.
from the time even before you come out. Just start
Mhm.
jotting down, journaling, diaries, blogging. Like, start telling those stories. Take those pictures. Save that, because our story is continuing to evolve, and somebody
Mhm.
down the line will want to hear your story. Which actually, reading your book and knowing about you, I was like, I have all these pictures that I've taken from when I was in junior high. Like, I need to put those in order and start
Yeah.
telling my story in a way so that maybe my nephews, or further down the line, somebody else can look at it
Right.
and go, oh wow, like, there was this is part of history, for him, and the way it was. So
Right.
I'm going to show you all the picture of the cover of the book. Where did I leave it? I just had it. There we go. So, where did the idea for the cover and everything come from?
The photos that are in there are some of my grandmother's photos. Actually, all those photos are my grandmother's photos. So I wanted something that was going to kind of pay homage to that. And so I had some. I go, well, if I use one photo, I feel like I want to use this photo. So I couldn't really decide. So I kind of presented the idea to the artist that did it, and she did an amazing job. I love the colors. I wanted it to be ornate and old feeling, but yet fresh and new, to kind of represent the past and the present moments that we're going through. So, yeah, I really love the color. The cover is amazing.
Uh,
And
I,
yeah,
I love the vintage photos. I love vintage photos.
yeah,
Uh, we're gonna Let me post the website. So if you want to hear more about Gayla Turner, here is her website. Make sure you go check it out. Information is all in there. But the book is not out yet.
no, but you can pre-order it wherever books are sold. But also, if you go to my website, there's links there to some of the big clearinghouses, but also for indie for indie print as well, and some of the local um, independent dealerships for books. Fully support that. So that you can pre-order it now, but it will be released on the 24th.
Okay. Just for everybody who is out there, if you're watching this on replay, the show is being recorded on May 21st, which is Saturday, and then May 24th, which is Tuesday, um, will be out. So you can pre-order it if you're watching this in the next couple of days. But if it's past the May 24th, then get the book. You will. I tell you, the only reason I was at the airport, and I was like, I was just so exhausted. It'd been a long. I was delayed forever, and but I'm like, I want to. They're books that I get to read, and I can just read at the airport or read anywhere. I'm like, okay, I get through this. But then there's books that are so detailed, and you're like, I want to be awake so that I can remember these moments. So I'm going to reread and pay attention to it again. Um, Also, I wanted to make sure that we showed some of the websites and some of the things that you talked about. So the Wisconsin uh, history .org, go check them out. They have information. And then there's a historical novel society, and go check them out. We still have about 10 minutes, so we're not done yet. Um, is there something that we didn't talk about that you want to share?
Just well, also when you go to my website, be sure to sign up for the newsletter. You'll get some transcript of the book, but also I'm starting to do speaking engagements and also using that for a platform for some of our LGBTQ history. So as I find it, I'll be able to add that to the website and kind of start creating more of a historical view of LGBTQ history. There is a lot of sites out there. One Archives is in Los Angeles, and they're a huge archive of LGBTQ photos. So they're another wonderful resource. But sign up for the newsletter. But look at the past and let's make sure that we're paying attention to the past.
Have Did your partner get a chance to read the book
Oh
before?
yeah, no, she's read it many times.
And
Very loving.
what was the feedback?
Well, I think of course they're never going to say, "Oh, it sucks," but no, very supportive. I mean, that's where I feel that I'm very fortunate. I have a partner that's very supportive of that, and giving me their feedback and giving her feedback on the book was important for me.
I have to admit, when I was reading it too, I'm very visual, maybe because I do a lot of writing stuff. But I kept thinking, this is such a cool series. Like this would be such a
Yeah,
great, like the chapters are an episode in themselves,
right,
just a journey. Because I immediately went to fried green tomatoes
right. Yeah.
the for those of you, if you have not watched fried green tomatoes, what's wrong with you? You should
Oh,
watch
that's the best movie ever. Yeah,
one of the best. And then, I mean, if I ever want to bawl and cry, that's
yeah,
go to.
yeah.
But it immediately took me to that
Mm.
relationship and how if you knew, you knew.
Right,
You know what I mean? Like if
right.
when the first time I watched it, I was like,
Yeah. Wait. What are you saying? Yeah.
"What's going on here?"
Right.
But the book gave me that vibe. So for any producers or directors out there watching, like
Yeah.
this would be an amazing series to watch, especially now that a lot of like, for instance, Netflix and um,
Mm.
Amazon are putting together. Just throwing that out there to the universe, see if it
Yeah.
sticks.
No, I think everybody that all my friends that have read it have said exactly the same thing. It would be a great series or mini series or whatever it is. And I'm like, yeah, I would love to get that out there into the ethers and see what comes back.
So I know it's just coming out, but
Yes.
do you have the author itch? Are you want to write another book? Is there a
I
follow up?
started writing another because a couple of the characters in there I really felt attachments to, and I felt that I wanted to go more into their story. There's Ralph, and there's just some characters in there that I really wanted to find out more about and wanted to dig deeper because just so the readers understand, this is kind of a weaving of current and past and present. So there's a weaving of the story that I discovered as I was doing research. So some of the characters in there are just really so interesting to me, and I wanted to find out more about them. And doing more research and doing more research even on my grandfather, seeing where he went in kind of going into that direction. And there's some characters I like to definitely do some more research on. But uh, on top of that, I also working on or looking to do a picture book, so a coffee table picture book of
Ooh.
all of her photos because there are a lot of photos and they're all they themselves tell the picture. They tell the story. Really, the pictures tell the story about what it might have been like. So without words, even I think it would be a wonderful like coffee table book.
So Johnny says there was a storyline in and with an E that reminded him of the community in the book. Interesting.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
not seen that with the E. So
Oh my God, it's so you
I
got to
need to
see
watch
that.
it. See, I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to watch it.
Okay.
Yeah, because okay, so I know I'm not that far into the book, but like I wonder, like this box has been
Mm.
traveling for so long.
Right.
Like I remember being a kid and sneaking into my parents' stuff and fun.
Right.
Like I wonder, like, did Grandpa find the pictures and because I had this whole argument in my head for Grandma and Grandpa. So I
Right.
figured a picture. He found the box and it was like, "Who's this?" And she was like, "This is my story." And he was like, "Well, either get rid
Right.
of the box or I'm leaving." And she was like,
Right.
"Bye." And he was like, "Okay, I'm leaving." And she was like, "I'll call your bluff and get out of here." And she was
Right.
like, "I'd rather keep my memories than you." I had no, girl.
Yeah.
I had this whole story in my head at the end of
But I think he had his own story. I think they got married for the reasons that they had to get married, because that's what society told them that they had to do. My suspicions is that he was probably gay himself, because he never remarried or did anything else. So I have a feeling that they were both beards for each other, and he did his patriotic duty by having kids, having a wife and kids, and he did his duty, and then he just basically left. So I would like to track more of his history down to find out where did that leave him. I know where he went to. Now it's just kind of digging a little bit deeper into that and going back there.
that. Just, I mean, doesn't that? I mean, that just blows my mind. Like
Yeah,
that instead of going to the military, they were like, "Well, we don't care if you're gay or straight or lesbian. You have to get married, have a couple of kids, and then after that, you can do whatever you want." I mean, if we had to go through that,
yeah,
like yes, Kim, I agree. This book is a must read. It is a must read. Again, I was so irritated because I was tired and I was at the airport. And for the folks watching, there's a whole story, and I'll publish. I'll tell you about my own personal story yesterday. And but it is a must read. Again, for those of you interested, check it out at GaylaTurner.com. Remember, this show is being recorded on May 21st. The book comes out Tuesday, May 24th. You can pre-order, get it. You won't regret it. Again, it's easy. It's an easy read.
yeah,
Gayla does such a great job describing the scenes, so you feel like you're there. In the first, I'm gonna be honest. In the first 7 episodes, I was already giggling at some stuff. I was crying. I felt the goosebumps, and like I was in the car with you driving, and then I was in the mirror looking. And that's all I'm going to say for you folks because you
yeah.
have to read the rest. Um, any last comments before we go?
No, I just hope that the readers get the intent was to entertain and educate. That was, important message for me to share with everybody, and I think I've done that. But I hope everyone enjoys it as much as I did just going through the experience.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you and having you on the show. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Daniel.
I'm going to put you in the green room. I'll be back for you in just 1 second.
Awesome. Thank
For everybody watching, again, thank you for everybody who's watching on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. Please do us a favor and share this on your page so that other folks can watch it. If you're watching us on YouTube, scroll down, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. It'll let you know when the new show is on. If you want to know what's happening here at Little Mexican Productions Inc., remember on Wednesdays, it's the Christian and Daniel show. On Fridays, the Cardivo. On Saturdays, put it together conversations and check us out at littlemexicanproductions.com, hashtag Little Mexican Productions Inc. Coming this month, I have a couple of jobs that I'm doing that will keep me away from doing shows. So we're going to be off the air for a couple of weeks, but we will come back at the beginning of June. So stay tuned for more episodes, more shows. If you're not following me on the Facebook page, go check it out. There's pictures and stuff that I've been part of. You can check out what's going on. Grumpy Bunny and the Colors Game is for sale. So if you know about my book, get in touch and I'll make sure I get that to you. The link is not up yet. I'm getting somebody to help me revamp my website. So make sure that we get the book to you folks. For now, I want to thank Gayla Turner for being on the show. Thank you for watching. And remember, hey, keep it together. And we'll see you next time. Bye.